Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Chris, and today I'd like to share with you an updated version of my game Manafolds. So Manafolds is a trick-taking area control game for 2 to 4 players. I have a setup right here for a 2-player game. In Manifolds, you represent the commander of a cohort. Um, so this is the Splinter Claw cohort right here. This is the Sun Screamer cohort. There are 6 possible cohorts in the game. Each is going to be allied with one corresponding faction. So this is the Nature faction's allied cohort, and then this is Fire for this example. The 6 factions in the game are Nature, Sky, Water, Fire, War, and Darkness. And so in the game, you're trying to become the most prestigious cohort. You can get more prestige from ruling sites. These are the sites on the board. You can get prestige from completing quests. During the game, quests are going to be added to different sites at their matching sort of corresponding suits. And if you complete a quest, you'll get the card. It'll give you some special ability. And then also you would get a point. The final way to get points is through winning the tricks, or what are called encounters. During the game, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 encounters, and each player is going to have 4 cards during an encounter. During a season, they're going to be dealt 4 cards. These cards are going to get played up here, and then whoever. So in this game, actually, this is technically the setup, just a 2-player game. And so whoever wins the trick will get the cards. And so what you're trying to do is fulfill certain card-based objectives that pertain to these encounters. And so during an encounter, there's going to be a chosen suit. This is called the Exalted Suit. Let's say it's water. So in this example, whoever plays the highest water card, if we look here at the scoring objectives, whoever claims the highest water card, whoever claims the lowest water card, and then whoever claims the most cards. Claim is different from play. If you play a card, you evaluate who wins the encounter, and then they would acquire the cards. They'd probably just put them on their board somewhere, whether it's next to their player board somewhere. And that's pretty much how the game, kind of an overview of the game in terms of the scoring objectives. I'm excited to share with everybody the way that the area control ties into these the scoring objectives. I think there's some pretty interesting things here. Let's do a quick overview of the board first. So what I plan to do is overview the main board, each player's cohort board, and then I'm going to go through the setup for this 2-player game. And then in a follow-on video, I'm going to walk through one of the seasons in the game. There's 4 seasons total. And so my plan is to walk through a season, go through the 4 encounters for that season, show some of the disc actions, show the card play, some of the encounter effects, and then show kind of how the game would unfold. So we're looking at the main board right now. As you can see, there are 13 sites. There's the capital, it's called the Central Fold, and then there are 2 sites for each of the 6 factions in the game. So for example, these are the nature sites, Everroot Forrest and Water Marsh, and those are nature sites. As you can see, they're kind of color-coded with the suit symbol. This is the encounter area. As I mentioned, there are 4 encounters that are going to happen during one of the 4 seasons in a game. This is where you play your card that you're dealt. This is the main deck of cards. So the deck is comprised of 60 cards. There's 48 here to start. And then the remaining 12 are sprinkled over here in what are called suit piles. And the interesting thing about these suit piles is that you know what card is going to be in them. So there are ways to draw cards from these piles. And by doing so, 1, you know what kind of card you are getting. But 2, you're also sort of letting your opponents know what cards you may have in your hand at any given time. Um, I mentioned the score track over here, season track. Each site can hold a quest card. So these are shuffled and drawn and put into play like I showed earlier. These are called manifest cards. These are tied to, that was lucky. They're tied to the exalted suit. So for example, this is called Drownfall. And what it does is it kind of makes, during the game, you can add these flood cubes to the board. When you do that, they'll deal damage to players. So that's kind of an effect that happens that's tied to, like I mentioned, the exalted suit. Whoever leads the season is going to get to dictate what the exalted suit is for that round. So there's some interesting things that happen there. One, the suit would go there. We'll go back to the water example again real quick. So again, that's the water example. This manifest card would manifest. And then these sites would open up, and ruling these sites would give points. The other ones are effectively closed. The capital is always open for contention, no matter what the exalted suit is. Okay. That's everything that I wanted to share with the main game board. Let's go into a little bit about the cohort board and some of the components. These are dice. These are called quest dice, and they are going to relate to the quests, and they're going to let you, they basically track quest progress. If you get it all the way to 3, that's going to proc the quest. You'll get a point, and then you'll get that item. I mentioned the allies, the alliances for each of the cohorts. So this is ally with nature, so they get to start with the nature disc, and then they also have what's called a mana fiend disc that has a special ability. You can always treat this disc as a nature disc. Similarly, this one can be treated like a fire disc, but it does provide really powerful effects, so you may want to consider what you use that disc for and choose wisely. These components over here, as well as these levels, pertain to disc actions. Each of the factions has their own discs. So this will, some of them are going to use these levels. There's encounter effects on the cards. Those may also relate to these levels and some of these other pieces. I'm going to talk more about these in the walkthrough of the season, so I don't want to focus on that now. This little banner here talks about the different units. There are 3 types of fighting units. Those are units that can take damage or receive damage. So there are troops. These are worth 1 strength. These are companions. They're 2 strength. And then the mana fiend. Each cohort has a unique 1 single mana fiend that's worth 4 strength. Okay. And strength is going to be what decides who wins ruling sites. So for example, let's say Stagnar was over here, and this was one of the exalted sites. If Stagnar goes toe-to-toe with this Phoenix companion and this Sunscreamer troop, Stagnar would win, because this unit's 4 strength versus this 2 + 1, 3 strength. In the event of a tie, there's no points awarded unless an ability says otherwise. And then finally, well, not finally, there are some effects related to the companions and mana fiend units of the board. I'm not going to get into those. They will be brought up during the season walkthrough. The final thing that's arguably one of the most important aspects of the game is this action tableau that players are going to be building during the game. So there's going to be a setup. We're going to walk through that where you draft some of these discs, but I mentioned there are 4 encounters. The board is deliberately split into 4 lines. So during one of the encounters, you're going to choose one of the available lines, take all the actions in that line, and then play a card. Everyone's going to do so. We're going to play cards up here. And then after a player plays cards and takes actions for one of their lines, you choose, you decide who wins. And then the winner's going to claim all the cards. Let's say the Splinter Claw cohort 1, they would take the cards. And then they would choose an encounter effect, and then they would lead the next encounter. This will tell who leads. Let's put these back before we forget about them. So there are 16 total discs that a player can have on their board. Once they're on in these spots, they are locked there and they cannot be rearranged. However, if you acquire more discs beyond your 16 disc limit, you can then exchange out discs, returning old discs you no longer want back to the supply. Okay, so let's go through the setup right now. To aid me in this, I'm going to look at the back of the player board. The player board is broken into two sections. There's the simultaneous setup section, and we've already started to go through that. We have our rage, water, and heat levels set up. We have our little tree unit, our power die, some disguise tokens, cubes. We've got our commander pawn. We have our allied discs. We will now add some troops to our allied sites. So I mentioned, this faction is allied with nature. So they will start with a troop with a fighting presence in these two sites. One of the sites is a campsite, namely for this faction, for this cohort. It's going to be Water Marsh. And what this means is if, this player has all of their troops wiped off the board, they can always spawn back here. This is kind of like a safe haven. So be careful if you're an opponent and you're trying to control this site, because they are still technically here. This camp does not add any strength to rule for that site. It's not a fighting unit. That would be what I would say there. Okay, we were going through setup. We got the 4 troops there. And we got the nature discs. Yep, so we are set up here from the simultaneous side, and then similar, this player would be doing a similar thing. They'd be putting some troops here, as well as here. And their camp is here. Nope, that is a Phoenix unit. This is the camp. The camp is not here. Due to gameplay reasons, this is a volcano that can explode. Probably doesn't make sense to have a volcano there, or a camp under the volcano. So that's why this is the chosen site. Just a little bit of background there. Okay, we now do the turn-based setup. So normally what would happen here is you'd roll the die, determine first player randomly, or by some cute little thematic effect, but we'll just do random. So let's say the Splinter Claw cohort is going to go first. We will deal out some cards. There's 4 encounters. So normally during the game you would have 4 cards. However, for setups, for a little bit more variety, can give people 6 cards. Okay. Yeah, this sounds good. So what we can do is before we do the card draft, so let's highlight on the turn-based setup a little bit more. So you can put some troops in sites adjacent to your allied sites. So for the Splinter Claw cohort, the allied sites are these 2. And Goreground, Sunshell Cove, and then the Melting Point are all adjacent to these 2, technically. It's actually kind of interesting, the nature players all the way over here, very far from the capital, kind of sequestered off there in the southeast corner of the map. But anyways, let's add some troops. We know that we're going first. You don't know this yet, but fire and darkness are very good at removing troops. So since we're going first, we're not too scared of the fire player. So let's go ahead and at least drop a troop there. Maybe we'll drop 2 over here. That way we can try to. So let's put. You know what? We want to try to maybe be close to the capital. Let's make a push there. So those are our 4 units. We then choose 2 cards. We're going to choose this 10 definitely, and then we'll choose this this water card. If you look at the anatomy of a card, I'll zoom in on this real quick. There's the suit in the left corner, top left corner. There's a number, either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. And then there's some encounter effects, so either take or the general encounter effects. These are on all cards, March, Muster, or Discover. I'm going to walk through what these mean later. And then finally, there's the orbs. So there are 4 orbs on this card, which means it's part of setup. I'm going to grab 1, 2, 3, 4 for this card. This card is going to get discarded, and then the water card will provide me with 2 starting water discs. All right, back to the battle. These are called battle lines. We then get to arrange these discs how we want. So I'm thinking maybe I want to do something like this. I'm not going to walk through the strategy elements of how you want to build these action tableaus yet. They're fun to discover on your own. But I also haven't really discovered what the best way to go about building it is. So I think it's a fun exercise to try to figure out which one to do. All right, we added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 discs. 9 minus 6 is the number of troops that we put in the central fold. So we're going to put 3 troops here. So kind of what's going on here is depending on how many discs if you're dealt a bad 6 cards, you're not going to get punished for not having as many actions available to you as your opponents. So I think it is generally good to have more discs to start, but if you really want specific cards, it'll help to that'll help balance things out. So for example, let's see here. I know this is a low-valued Sky card, but from a tutorial-based perspective, just so I can showcase some of the disc abilities, I'm going to choose that card. And I'm also going to choose this with this War card. That may not be what I would do in a normal game, but just so I can show things off, we're going to go ahead and do that. But before I actually add these discs to the board, I skipped a step. Technically, I'm supposed to add troops to sites adjacent before I get the discs. So let's go ahead and put some troops here and maybe up here at Blightweb Valley. So I'm going to put 2 troops here, and I'm going to put 2 troops up here. The next thing we do is we look at the discs, count them up. So 1, and then another 3. We will arrange these in just a minute. I'm going to discard the cards. So 9 minus 4 gives us a starting presence of 5 here, which may not, since we're not going first, unfortunately, it's possible that these will get wiped out by the green player. But we'll see what they choose. They may not be motivated to do that just yet. Okay, we will put those in there. Maybe tilt them a little bit on their side. Okay. How do I want to build this out? I think I want to do that. That looks good. I'm going to actually, just thinking ahead a little bit, I'm going to rearrange those like that. I think that'll make sense for the tutorial. And that is the setup, everybody. So we're going to start the first season off with the Splinter Claw cohort, and I'll walk through all the setup there in a minute. So this card's going to help walk through the season phases. So that will be for the next video. Thanks, everybody.